This is our final lecture of the digestive system, and it's not actually about the digestive system. It's about the urinary system. But since we don't have a lot of time to cover the urinary system, and it's kind of similar to the digestive system in that it's a filtration system that then produces waste that is evacuated out of the body, and you probably are familiar with it being kind of a similar process if you're looking at it from a peeing and pooping standpoint. That's why I like to lump it in with the digestive system. We will also have a dissection over this, so you'll want to be a little bit prepared for that. The biggest thing I want you to know with the urinary system, is the biggest structures. So I want you to know the kidneys. I want you to know the ureters, which are the tubes that lead from the kidneys to the bladder, and then the urethra. The bladder just holds on to the urine until it can pass out of the urethra and out of the body. The urethra is the tube leading from the bladder that evacuates the urine. The kidneys act as a filtration system. The ureters take the filtrate from the kidneys down to the bladder. So I want to talk a little bit more about this on this slide because you can actually see the renal vein and the renal artery. The tube here in blue is the renal vein, and then the renal artery is here in red. So the renal vein and the renal artery will carry blood to and from the kidneys and back to the heart. But as the blood passes through the kidney, it's going to pass through a whole bunch of little filters that will filter out any electrolytes or leftover vitamins or anything else that's being carried in the blood. Sometimes dead blood cells and stuff like that will also get filtered out here. And all of that stuff will be collected in the kidney and then pass through the ureter into the bladder, where it will be mixed in and with some urea that will turn it into urine. So, some problems that can arise inside of the urinary system. The first one I'm going to talk about is called a UTI. That stands for urinary tract infection. This is where you have an inflammation or infection of either the bladder or the urethra leading down from the bladder. And here you can see normal bladder tissue, and here you can see some infected bladder tissue. You can see the difference. You can see those bacterial colonies all along that bladder tissue. Some symptoms here are frequent urination, trouble urinating, or painful urination, and the urine actually being kind of a milky or cloudy color. That cloudiness is coming from white blood cells and dead bacterial cells that are being passed with the urine. As your body tries to fight this infection, those white blood cells flood into your bladder to fight it. But as they die and kill off other bacteria, they're being passed in the urine. So anytime you see that cloudiness, you can kind of think about it as like what pus would be if you had like an infected cut. Pus is white blood cells and dead bacterial cells, and you express that from a wound. The same thing you have with a UTI, only that is coming out with your urine. The next thing is kidney stones. And I like to talk about kidney stones because I can get a little bit more in depth in what's happening with the kidney structures. So the first thing you need to know is the kidney cortex. The kidney cortex is this outer wall of the kidney. Then in here you have the medulla. That's the main part, and that's where the filtration happens. Then you have what is called the renal pelvis. The renal pelvis is this kind of funnel here, and that funnel leads into the ureter. As the medulla filters out blood, sometimes you can get little pieces of things that collect into hard chunks. So if you've ever been in chemistry and done precipitate reactions where you put two solutions together and you get a solid out of that. Then you can kind of understand where kidney stones come from. You have these fluids that come together, and once they mix, you get a solid being created from that reaction. And those solids then get compacted into stones, or what we call stones. They're like balls of precipitate. And then those have to be passed. Those can be sonically or laser blasted in order to make them smaller pieces that are easier to pass. Although sometimes, like kidney stones of this size, they'll probably just let those pass naturally because you're trying to reduce the amount of damage to the ureter. With kidney stones that are large, they can actually tear the ureter before they pass. And that is severely problematic and would have to be repaired with surgery. But the thing about kidney stones is they can affect anyone of any age. It just has to do with how many electrolytes and other vitamins that your kidneys have to filter out and then compact into an area that you can see kidney stones. And people as young as teenagers, we have seen an uptick in kidney stones. And we think that has to do with the rise of drinking things like energy drinks, just like their water, because they have all these electrolytes in them that, of course, contribute to kidney stone problems. So that is the end of our digestive unit as a whole. We will be, of course, doing dissections and different things, especially over the kidneys, but this is the end.